That's something that. Thank you for recording. So the reason we came up with today's topic is hygiene seal, and the importance of hygiene is absolutely critical. And as a restaurant, you need to understand FSSAI, what compliance means, and what are some of the best practices, right? So this is one of the first videos you're coming up together with Swiggy Food and Equinox Lab. So thank you, the team at Swiggy, for initiating this, and thank you everyone for making this happen. Um, I think he's already introduced me. I'm the founder and CEO of Equinox Labs. I'll introduce Equinox Labs for a second so you know a little bit of perspective of where I'm coming from. So I started Equinox Labs 19 years ago with a focus on water, food, and air testing. We very soon grew to one of India's largest food safety auditing companies as well. Today, we cater to almost about 85,000 customers across the F&B and corporate spectrum. We have 6 regional labs: Mumbai, Bangalore, Hyderabad, Noida, Chennai, Kolkata. But more than that, we actually do sample collections of 500 plus cities pan India, making us a truly pan India partner for companies like Swiggy and restaurants who have in one place or have a national chain as well. We today have more than 750 auditors across India, which make us Asia's largest auditing firm. Till today, we've trained over about 1.2 lakh people in areas of food safety, FSSAI, and environment safety. Today, our in-house team, which is within our laboratories, is about 550 people in the domain expertise of water, food, air, hygiene, and FSSAI. So, any of our customers, anytime they have any questions about anything, within minutes, they're actually talking to one of India's leading experts in that field. We're an award-winning organization. We won a Great Place to Work. We won Food Safety Leadership Award in Singapore. We won 100 Most Impactful Healthcare Leaders globally twice, actually. And we've also won the Operational Excellence Award from SPJ. So this is a little bit about us. So let's get into why compliance even matters, right? Many people think of FSSAI as a license, right? While it starts out as that, the reason compliance matters is today regulatory challenges are a lot because the law keeps changing. But more than that, the reason compliance matters is that it finally builds trust with your consumers. And if you're able to build trust with your customers, with your consumers, that will drive growth, right? So today, 60% of food businesses that face regulatory challenges every year are because of non-compliance. And sometimes these are very, very small, right? It's not always a complaint that will trigger somebody to come in, but even during normal visits of FSSAI, 60% of issues come over small non-compliances. And we'll talk about, as a restaurant, what are the 7 mandatory compliances and maybe 5 best practices, right? What we've also seen, with consumers is if you have FSSAI license, if your place is neat and clean, if a person feels safe at your place, 80% of consumers prefer to eat at places where they feel safer, right? So that's a very big distinguishing factor. So if you're able to be compliant, it's actually good for business, right? So a little bit about FSSAI. I'm very sure all of you know about FSSAI, but since we're talking about FSSAI, I think it deserves at least a 30-second introduction. So FSSAI stands for Food Safety Standard Authority of India. It's an autonomous body which was established under Ministry of Health and Welfare of Government of India. The difference between FSSAI and its predecessor, before FSSAI, there used to be an act called PFA, Prevention of Food Adulteration, right? So this act was a British era. So it started that time, when Britishers were there, Prevention of Food Adulteration Act was there. And this continued, surprising, till 2011. PFA, which was a British era act, was maintaining our food safety in the country. And funny enough, PFA did not even talk about food safety. It was about prevention of adulteration. Safety was the next level, which is exactly what FSSAI brought into play, right? So the difference between those two is FSSAI is a very scientific based, standard. Which regulates right from manufacturing, storage, distribution, sale, import of food, and it ensures that this food is safe for human consumption, right? So whether you're an NGO, whether you're a restaurant, whether you're a hotel, whether you're a food manufacturer, whether you're a hospital, school, office, anywhere where food is prepared, stored, distributed, sold, or imported, or even exported, FSSAI governs all of this. So that's the apex body of food safety within India. What we've seen is when customers see FSSAI, 94% of them will trust that company a lot more over a brand that doesn't have FSSAI, right? Now, everyone who's listed on Swiggy obviously has FSSAI because it's a part of the onboarding process. So the license is the first step that you'll have to take. However, you have to ensure that you have the right license. We will discuss that shortly, right? Another big difference between the previous law and FSSAI is the penalties. The previous law used to have penalties like 500 rupees, 1,000 rupees were the official penalties, 2,000 rupees. These are official penalties, right? However, FSSAI does have a bite. It has penalties starting off at 50,000, going all the way up to 10 lakhs for a single offense. And there are some penalties which include jail time as well. So somebody consumes your food and dies, there is jail time involved in that as well, right? The big difference in the two acts is what makes FSSAI also a little bit more effective, because people are now a little bit more afraid of FSSAI than they were of PFA. People didn't really care much about PFA. They just had that small little chitta of PFA, that also, if any. But FSSAI now, the way it has been implemented has been, very widespread. And FSSAI did a very smart thing. What they did is they made it mandatory for a lot of businesses working with other food businesses, saying, hey, if you're going to work with any other food businesses, anyone you buy for has to have FSSAI. Or like for platforms, hey Swiggy, if somebody's going to list on a platform, you need to FSSAI, right? So FSSAI did a very smart thing, is they mandated a lot of other bodies to make it mandatory for anyone to interact with them, they need to FSSAI. So today, the presence of FSSAI licensing is almost, I think, at 80-85% in the country, while 3-4 years ago, it was hardly about 50%. Right? So that number is rising. I think by 2026, India, every food business in India should be having an FSSAI license, no matter if you're small or big, right? So why do restaurants require FSSAI license, right? Like, what are some of the advantages? One, it helps you to ensure food safety and hygiene, because one of the most basic requirements of FSSAI of Schedule 4 is maintaining food safety and hygiene. It gives you a regulatory framework, it gives you a legal framework, so you have to comply. There are some regulations that you have to comply with, and it also offers some amount of legal protection. And many people are not aware of this. Many people think that, oh, FSSAI se danda leke aayega. But if you are following FSSAI, if you're doing all the testing, if you're doing all the audits, if there is a problem, all of this data that you're collecting actually becomes like a shield protecting you from the consumer, right? So I've been associated with FSSAI right from 2011. And for the last 7 years, I'm also working as the national advisor. So most of the regulations that go through FSSAI go through my laptop at some point or the other. My role, funny enough, even though I'm from a laboratory, my role is not representing laboratories, actually representing industry, because we work with such a wide array of food companies. So that's the role I play with FSSAI. What we've seen is people who comply with FSSAI face lesser legal complications. To even if there's a legal complication, if you are actually compliant with FSSAI, those documents, those test reports, audit reports, licenses, quality checks, all become like a shield protecting you, right? So I remember about 10 years ago, I wrote my first book on FSSAI. It was actually, the first title draft was called 13 Ways to Protect Yourself from FSSAI. But then I realized very soon, after talking to a lot of people, talking to a lot of restaurateurs, food manufacturers, even some people in FSSAI, then I realized I need to tweak the name a little bit. Then we made the name 13 Ways to Protect Yourself from the Consumer, right? Today, when most of the time there is a complaint, it is not FSSAI that has, putting a complaint against you. It's your consumer who's putting a complaint against you with FSSAI, which triggers an audit, which triggers somebody to come to your location and audit you and raid you and pick up samples and all of that, right? But if you have taken care of all the compliance requirements, that actually becomes like a shield that protects you from any kind of a lawsuit, right? Last but not the least is it gives you access, to training material, to a lot of resources. And the most biggest advantage that you get is you build customer trust, you build credibility just by having that simple license and just by complying, right? So let's like right now we'll be covering 7 mandatory compliances by FSSAI, right? The first one is obviously license that you all know. I'm going to quickly run through this, and there are slides, on each one of this. So we'll talk about licensing. We'll talk about FOSTAC, which is a training requirement. We'll talk about the 6-monthly water testing, which is mandatory. We'll talk about the medical testing, which has to be done once in a year. We'll talk about cleaning and hygiene. We'll talk about raw material handling and cooked food handling, right? What we've seen is today, 10% of restaurants fail their initial FSSAI inspection But very soon, if they actually take those little mini steps, they can pass that really easily. So many restaurants, what they do is when they open up, before they apply for a license, or before if somebody just want to come and check, they do a pre-audit to ensure that they're ready for an actual inspection, right? And this is another very interesting fact that we found, that restaurants which have FSSAI compliances in place, their life of restaurant actually increases by 25%. Right? So people who've actually shut down restaurants, and we track a lot of them because we work with a lot of restaurants. I personally work with a lot of restaurant founders as well. People who've been complying with FSSAI actually last 25% longer than companies that don't. Right? I'm not saying that's the only factor, but that is a factor that we see. Right? So uh, getting an FSI license is something that obviously all of you know of. I'm very sure all of you have it, but you also need to ensure it is displayed prominently at your location. It has to be behind in the cash counter where somebody walks into a restaurant. They need to be able to see it. It needs to be there on your receipts. It needs to be there on your menu. It needs to be there on your bills. If you have any kind of packaging, it needs to be there on that as well. Right. So that is mandatory. Today, an FSSAI license number is a 14-digit number. Right. And if a restaurant fails to display this number in all the right places, there are penalties and fines associated with it, right? So this is something that you'll find interesting, which a lot of people don't know. What does that 14-digit number actually mean, right? The first digit is actually shows you whether it's a license or registration. So if your revenue is smaller, like 10 lakhs or lower, you need to go for 10, 12 lakhs or lower, you need to go for a registration, which is a 100 rupee per year thing, which is designed for small hawkers on the street or people doing small things from their home. If you're a restaurant, you normally would be doing more than about 12 lakh rupees a year, you will need to go for a license. So most of our licenses will actually begin with the number 2. Right? The next 2 digits is actually to do with your state. The 2 digits after that are to do with the year when you first got your license. The next 3 digits actually do with your registrar officer, from whom under whom you come under, from where you got your license, and the last 6 digit are the serial number for your actual thing. So this together creates a very unique identification. So, and by seeing somebody's number, it's a license or registration, which state it is, which year they got it in. The registrar may not make a big difference to you. And obviously, the last 6 digit is a unique number, for your location, right? FOSTAC training is a very interesting initiative by FSSAI, and I'll give you a little bit of history to FOSTAC. So about 7 years ago, the then CEO, Mr. Pawan Agarwal, he had just come back from Singapore, and he called me to his cabin once when I was in Delhi, and he said, Ashwin, I want to make sure that every food handler in India is trained. And I remember telling him, sir, this is India, this is not Singapore. We will not be able to train every single food handler. But he was very keen that there has to be a central or a state-driven initiative to train food handlers. So I agreed with him. I said, absolutely, food handlers should be trained, but getting every food handler trained by FSSAI is not going to work. Hence, we came up with the concept of FOSTAC, which is the Food Safety Certification and Training, right? Food Safety Training and Certification, that's what FOSTAC stands for. Under FOSTAC, what you need to do is, if you have up to 25 food handlers, one person needs to undergo the food safety supervisor training. Typically, this can be a supervisor. If you're a small restaurant, there are only 1 or 2 units, or maybe only 1 unit, you as a founder, you as the owner, or maybe sometimes as a manager, you can attend that training, because you will possibly associate with the restaurant longer than some person who's just working supervisor today. 6 months later, he's gone, right? So unless you're running a larger chain, if I'm working with smaller companies, I always guide them to that, hey, can you, as an owner, get the certification done? It's 1 day every 2 years. It's a simple thing to do. The training that you will need to undergo, as you can see here, there are multiple different trainings that are available. However, there is a catering training that is available, which is basic and advanced. Both these are available. So if you're a fresher, you can do basic training. If you have 2 years of experience and more, you can do an advanced training. Right. So once you get this training done, it can be done online or it can be done offline. Training today is very, very affordable. There are 200 plus training partners. Equinox also is one of them. We are one of the larger ones. But today, there are 200 training partners spread out across India. There are more than 1,000 trainers that have been trained up, to deliver this training as well. So please ensure, as one of your part of your compliances, at least you have one individual who is trained under FOSTAC at every of your locations. So let me reiterate. If you have 2 locations and 2 licenses, you need to have one person here and another person here. So if you have 2 restaurants, you need to have 2 people. Suppose you have a slightly larger restaurant and you have 30, 40 food handlers. then for every 25 food handlers, you require one fast-track trained individual. So if you have 30, 40 people, you need two fast-track trained individuals. If you have more than, for every 25 people, you need one, right? The beauty of fast-track training, it's very, very easy. Most of it is going to be common sense to you. It's not rocket science. There is a test at the end to ensure that you're paying attention. 95% of people who take the test pass it. If you don't pass it, means you've not been paying attention, and you possibly need to sit for it and pay attention, and then you can easily pass the test. Almost 100% of people who take it the second time pass, right? The beauty is if you are able to do this fast track training, you as a trained supervisor or anyone that you get trained within your organization can then in turn train the other food handlers, right? See, I've dealt with a lot of food safety issues, a lot of when people are hospitalized and there have been large issues. Equinox does get called into situations. I get called into situations. What I've realized is no food handler wakes up today saying that, oh, let me make 100 people fall ill. Nobody does that, right? It's all by mistake, or they missed something, right? They missed it because they didn't know better. The training, what it does, it basically teaches you basics of food safety, basics of temperature control, basics of what is hazardous, what is not, how long can food be kept outside, and how many times can you reheat food. Basics things are taught. How do you wash your hands? All of this is taught, right? The advanced one talks about a little, few more things, but both of them cover all these basics. If every food handler is aware of this, the number of food poisoning incidences in our country will drop drastically, right? What we've been seeing is if 70% of foodborne illnesses can be completely eliminated if you're following basic FSSAI guidelines, right? And 40% of businesses who have fast track trained staff will get fewer quality related complaints. The reason is not just about fast track, any kind of training, right? Obviously, fast track is mandated by law, but any kind of training will ensure that your people are doing what they're supposed to do, the right thing over and over and over again, right? So we work with a lot of brands nationally. What we do is obviously we'll do fast track training for them once every 6 months for the new people who join. But every 3 months, we actually do a much smaller, like a 2-hour refresher training for all the teammates who join, right? You don't have to come to us. You can also do this in-house using your supervisor, right? Going ahead, we have a quick poll. Melvin, you want to take over?
Yeah. Before that, I just thought we just quickly summarize the important content that was covered, right? So, for the benefit of everyone and folks who might have joined a little later, so Ashwin went over the basics of why compliance matters and what is FSSAI and how does it differ from the previous act that we had, PFA. Yeah. So, why do restaurants need FSSAI? It's not just about business increase. It acts like a shield when we follow the right practices. Then we touched upon the 7 mandatory compliances and the meaning of the FSSAI license number and why we should display it. And then Ashwin also touched upon FOSTAC and the nuances, like like one a FOSTAC certified person for every location and also for every 25 food handlers. So, a very insightful session thus far. Let us see how the poll fares now. I would request everyone to take the poll and we'll move forward. Very interesting, Ashwin. So far, we have like 100% accuracy rate. Okay, now we have 96%.
Let's wait for 10, 15 more seconds for more people to fill it out.
Yeah,
So we get go.
yeah. I think yes, Ashwin. Over to you.
Cool. So, guys, as we can see, most people got the answer right. So, what is the requirement of someone who's appointed as a food safety supervisor in a hotel or restaurant? is basically completion of a fast track program on food safety and hygiene. It is, you do not require 5 years of experience in the industry. You do not require certification in customer service management, and you definitely do not require a degree in culinary arts. See, one thing which we've seen is today the restaurant industry, a lot of the people who are working in it may not be as educated, right? Especially the frontline workers, and which is perfectly fine. Hence, entire fast track training has been designed in a very visual manner. It can be delivered in all regional languages because we have regional trainers everywhere, right? The beauty of it is everyone can attend it, right? And at any level, you do not require any education specific background to attend a fast track training and to be certified as a food safety supervisor, right? Okay. Moving on, the next compliance that is mandatory by FSSAI is the 6 monthly water test, right? Now, FSSAI very clearly says, as a part of a licensing requirement, that every 6 months, every restaurant, cafe, any other than FSSAI license needs to get water testing done, and this needs to get uploaded to the FOSCOS portal, right? Now, this is very important for you to understand. Why is FS asking for doing this? Because many people, when I talk to them, they're like, "Oh, but we are using government water, we are using municipal water. How does it matter what the water is?" What we don't realize is, while municipal water may be clean, many times the pipelines that come to your area or your storage tank or your own setup may actually land up contaminating the water, right? Two, water is one ingredient that touches any and every kind of food, direct or indirect, right? Even if you're not directly using water, let's say you're making a sandwich, you may not directly use water to make, let's say, a cheese sandwich, right? Because you're taking bread, you're taking cheese, you're taking butter, you're like, where is water in what? Guess what was used to clean the plate? Guess what was used to clean the knife? What was used to clean the butter knife, right? What was used to clean, let's say, the grilling machine, and so on and so forth. So water directly or indirectly touches everything. Guess what was used to clean people's hands, right? So getting water testing done once every 6 months will help you ensure personally that, hey, what food I'm serving my customers is safe. Because you may take all the other precautions, but if the water quality is bad, if it has any kind of contamination, that can lead to a lot of issues, down the line, right? So here's the interesting part. What FSS says is the water quality you need to be testing for, the standard which you need to be testing against, is called IS 10500. That's what the law says. There is a small challenge there. The challenge is, if you get water testing done as per IS 10500, which is the drinking water standard set by Indian standards, it can get a little expensive, right? So some of the bigger brands do them, even some of the smaller brands do them. But there is another test I will talk about in the second half of the training, which you can do instead of this in case you find this a little more on the expensive side, right? So another interesting couple of facts is, today 80% of waterborne outbreaks that happen can be prevented by doing this test, right? Because if you know something is going wrong, you can take the right steps to get it corrected. If you never test it, you never know that something went wrong. Like, it was because of water, because of what there was an outbreak, or because of what somebody had food poisoning, right? And 60% of food safety issues of poor quality, funny enough, arise from quality of water. Hence, this becomes a very, very simple but very easy thing for you to do to ensure that you're complying with FSSAI and delivering safe food to your customers, right? Moving ahead, medical testing. Now, as per FSSAI license and regulation, it is required that every single food handler that you have, anyone who's touching food with their hands, needs to undergo a medical examination once in a year to ensure that they're free from any infectious or contagious diseases. This can happen in any government hospital, can happen in any clinic. You can go to any doctor who will give you a form that is filled out, which says that this person is okay, and you need to have all of these records available at your restaurant. Because if I'm a food safety officer and I come and if I ask for this information, I see 10 people, but I only see 5 forms. I will cut a challan for you. I will penalize you. And those penalties will start off at about 50,000 rupees. The cost of getting a person tested is between 200 to 500 rupees. The penalty starts off at 50,000 rupees. If you think you can manage it, the guy is still going to ask you for more money than you would spend to stay compliant. So one thing that I keep telling people again and again, maintaining compliance is cheaper than not maintaining compliance, right? If you don't comply, you say, I'll manage. What people don't realize is, earlier during the PFA times, when the penalties were 1,000, 2,000, you could manage a lot of things. But today, when the penalties are large, right, very large, even if you have to manage, you're actually spending more money then you would actually spend on compliance. And here is another very funny part. If they catch you, and even if you manage them, they will still ask you to get it done because they have to show in their report that, oh, you had it. If somebody else comes and says, Are, how did this guy's report have it? And I can't see it now. So they will still ask you to get it done, right? So anyways, you have to comply, whether you can manage it or not manage it. Anyways, you will need, right? So it is absolutely critical that this medical testing be done once a year for every teammate that you have. Anyone new who is joining on first day, second day itself, they need to go and get tested, and then only they'll be allowed to touch food, right? So 30% of food safety issues are related to undiagnosed staff health issues. So this is something you will be very, very careful, right? 98% of establishments with regular health checkups also pass inspections easily. Do you know why? Is it directly? This is not the only thing during inspection. But if a company is spending time, money, effort ensuring that every food handler is getting medical testing done, then they're also ensuring that a lot of the other companies, right? So it's not a direct correlation, but indirectly it shows the mindset of the founder, mindset of the company, right? That if you're willing to spend those 200 rupees, 300 rupees on every new person who joins, getting them tested, you're also spending a lot of effort on ensuring other compliances. Cleaning and hygiene, right? Now, this is one of the most simplest, what we call common sense things that you should have. What FSSAI says that it's mandatory for all food businesses to maintain hygiene and sanitation, right, throughout their facility, throughout their supply chain, right from production to service, right? What basically the regulation, which is the Food Safety and Sanitation Regulation of 2011, and it basically is applicable to the entire HoReCa sector, which is hotels, restaurants, and cafes, which all come under, right, and manufacturing and processing units as well. That this regulation basically talks that you should be maintaining basic hygiene and basic sanitation standards, right? 50% of hygiene practices can cut illnesses by 50%, right? So if you're able to just do simple things like ensure that all your staff washes their hands before they begin work, all your staff washes their hands once they come back from a break, all your staff washes their hands if they visit the restroom, right? Just these two, three. I'm not talking about the other cross contamination. Just these two, three things. Foodborne illnesses will be cut down drastically, right? The second very interesting part, if you maintain a clean, hygienic restaurant, right, 80% of your customers are likely to return to your establishment. Ask any customer, hey, you see a restaurant that was slightly dirty, will you come back here again? There is a 1 in 5% chance the person will say yes. But if the restaurant was clean and the food wasn't all that great, but they felt good, it was nice, clean, bright, the lights were there, everything was clean, there was no dirt, there were no rats, there were no flies, there was nothing. It was nice and clean, there is a good chance they will come back again, right? We had done a very simple survey asking people, especially when they travel abroad, like, hey, why do you go to McDonald's when you travel abroad? It's not that McDonald's has great food, right? So why do you go to McDonald's? Do you know what the answer was? Safe, not variety, nothing else. I mean, yes, obviously McDonald's has a great variety, obviously with every region they'll have their own regional flavors and all of that, which is great food. But that's not why, especially Indians, when they travel abroad, go to McDonald's, they go there because it is safe, right? They know that I will never fall ill by eating over here, no matter which country I'm, right? So that imagine having that safety associated with your brand, your restaurant. When somebody goes to eat in your restaurant, they feel safe. That is a very, very significant advantage that you will have over others, right? Even the hygiene seal that Swiggy has created does exactly that, right? Today, you may do a lot of all these things, behind the scenes, but you're like, hey, I'm spending all this time, money, effort, but my customer doesn't get to see it. That's exactly where the hygiene seal comes in. Because hygiene seal basically audits, when audits are done for hygiene seal, when a restaurant is audited, whatever good practices you're doing at the back, you get a certificate which is shown to your customer even before they come to your restaurant, right? Last time when we had surveyed, 26% higher click to order ratios for restaurants on apps where there is a seal versus where there isn't. So the two restaurants, both let's say Chinese, I feel like eating Chinese. I go to first restaurant has a seal, second it doesn't have a seal. The chance of me ordering from the first restaurant are 26% higher. That is incredible, right? Imagine the advantage you have over somebody else. 26% higher if you have a hygiene seal, in place, right? Okay, moving forward, temperature monitoring. This is one of the most critical food safety steps that you need to understand, make sure your staff understands. And it is simple, but at the same time, very, 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 very critical, right? If you're receiving high risk food, dairy, meat products, poultry, fish, any kind of seafood, your receiving temperature should be 4 degrees or below. I know that is very difficult to maintain. Please use suppliers who are able to do that for you, right? If you are receiving fish at room temperature, it is already gone bad. By the time you again refreeze it and have it, people will fall ill. Your brand will get hit, right? When you're receiving frozen products, ice cream, processed chicken, peas, or frozen vegetables, they need to be at 18 degrees on below, right? Please invest in a good thermometer. There are the injection type thermometers or the touch thermometers are like 2, 3, 400 rupees on Amazon. If you want to go for a laser thermometer, which is a little bit more expensive, they're about 2, 3 thousand rupees on Amazon, right? Please do buy them. I personally prefer the touch, but then you have to have separate veg, separate non-veg, and you have to keep cleaning them. However, they are more accurate and they will give you better core temperature as well. However, if you have a lot of things to measure, right? So our auditors have to measure a lot of things. So we cannot carry touch thermometers because there are 20 items and we need to measure all of them. We will have to measure your deep freezers and so on and so forth. So our auditors do use laser. However, there is a correction factor to be applied, especially for cooking. And I'll talk about that in a second, right? So when you're cooking something, the outside temperature is different than the inside temperature. The outside temperature is going to be higher, right? So if I'm taking a temperature of using laser of a veg patty that is being cooked, what FSSAI requires you is that any to be cooking something, they need to achieve 60 degrees for at least 10 minutes or 65 degrees for every 2 minutes that at core for the product to be cooked. When I'm doing laser, I can only see the surface, right? Typically, the difference between surface and inside is about 3 to 5 degrees. So if I need 65 degrees inside, the outside needs to be at least 70 if I'm using a laser, right? If I'm using a normal thermometer, I'm going to dip it in, I get a more accurate reading. But if I'm using a laser, which is more convenient because there's no cleaning involved or anything that way, I would go for 3 to 5 degrees higher. When you're cooking non-veg items, you need to be able to get to 65 degrees for 10 minutes or 75 degrees for 2 minutes, or if you're flash cooking something, 75 degrees for 15 seconds minimum at core. Only then will the item be considered cooked, right? This is a very, very critical step. By the way, you all can take screenshots throughout. However, at the end, we will also allow you to download the presentation. There's a QR code where you can download the presentation as well, right? So don't worry about that. When you're serving veg food, the serving temperature needs to be 65 degrees and above, and non-veg should be 70 degrees and above. Last but not the least, if you're reheating any food, right, something that was kept in the fridge, that needs to be, whether it's veg or non-veg, at 75 degrees for at least 2 minutes at core for it to be safe again, right? While you're doing all of this, I know this is very, most restaurants find it very difficult to pull it off, but maintaining temperature records, especially if you're doing batch cooking, it becomes easier. If you're cooking multiple recipes every 2 minutes, I know temperature record management becomes hard, right? I'm very well aware because I've been at the back end of so many restaurants. What I normally recommend is, especially when you're doing common prep, gravies, or morning you're preparing something and keep it for the day, at least monitor temperatures there, right? It becomes very crucial, and all of this data that I'm asking you to keep and maintain is going to come and protect you at some point in time when things go wrong, right? Raw material handling. Raw material handling is something which is again mandatory by law that you have to do it the right way. These are again standards set by FSSAI, and it comes under the Food Hygiene and Sanitation Regulation. There are a few key requirements of raw material handling. Source verification. You need to know where your raw materials come from. Preferably, the person you're buying from should have an FSSAI license, right? Now, many times when you buy something from a mandi, technically the mandi does have an FSSAI license. If you're buying it off the street, I know there is a very good chance there is an FSSAI license, so there's no traceability, right? But if and when possible, please buy where the source is traceable, right? Because something goes wrong, you can be like, oh, I bought this from here. But if there is no traceability, you're like, oh, I don't know where I bought this chicken from. Guess what? Now, if something went wrong with the chicken, you're responsible. There is no one for you to point the finger to, right? If you bought chicken from me and something happened to chicken, you can be like, oh, I bought from Ashwin, go catch his neck. But if you don't have my information, you don't have FSI number, you don't know, if you're not kept trace of where you bought it from, there is a good chance you're going to bite the bullet if something goes wrong from what I supply, right? Storage conditions are absolutely key when you're getting raw material. Handling practices, right? We'll talk about FEFO and FIFO. FIFO is basically first in, first out, and FEFO is first expiry, first out, right? So when you have, your storage, if you just store things from the front, because when you're taking out, you won't take out from the front, right? But if you get something new and you put it in the front, now what is happening is what is opened is already behind, what is older is already behind. So the right way to store things is from the behind. So only that what is needs to be used first is available first, because when somebody's cooking, they won't take out what is in front of them. The next way of doing it, which is a little harder and can possibly be done if you have a storekeeper or somebody responsible for raw material, is just first expiry first. What that means is if you get a new batch of, let's say, masala, and you already have masala that's unopened, you have to check what is the expiry of what you already have. Oh, this expires in Jan 25. What is in my hand expires in Feb 20. Jan 25 comes in front, Feb 25 goes behind, right? Oh, but what I got now expires in December 25. Oh, Jan 20 or December 24. Jan 25 goes back and December 24 comes front. This is called FEFO, right? When you're doing all of this, do try and maintain as many records of this as you can, that this activity is being done. Again, this is something that will help protect you in the future, right? 60% of foodborne illnesses which are linked to restaurants actually come from cross contamination right at the raw material level. Something from the chicken dripping onto your vegetables, something from something uncooked going to something cooked, and so on and so forth. Right? 30% of foodborne illnesses can be taken care of if the hygiene practices in the raw material stage are taken care of. So this is absolutely great, right? We already spoke about FIFO and FEFO here. When you are when you, let's say you receive chicken or you receive frozen material and you're going to put it back in cold storage, try and see if you can break them into smaller usable chunks. So if you're, let's say you got 5 kgs of chicken, there is a very rare chance you're going to take out all 5 kgs thought and use all 5 kgs. That's the case, then great. But many times you may only require 1 kg. So as soon as you receive it, cut it into 1 kg blocks, have them individually wrapped again, and now store them, because now you can just take out one block at a time. Right? Whenever you're taking out one block at a time, you'll need to thaw it and then you'll need to cook, right? I'm not going to get into how do you thaw and how do you cook, because we have very limited time, right? When you are storing the following material, you have to store them in dry and cool places, like your dry foods such as rice, lentil, flowers, nuts, have to be stored in a dry, cool place. When you're looking at acidified foods like vinegar, based sauces, chutneys, ketchups, all of these need to be stored in dry, cool places, right? When you have fridges, do not overstuff your fridges, because if your fridges are overstuffed, the air is not going to circulate, it is not going to get cold. Preferably have a different fridge for veg, a different fridge for non-veg. I know sometimes that can be difficult, one from a cost perspective, two from a space perspective. I'm very well aware. By the way, I'm a registered and certified auditor myself. I've done 1,000 plus audits. So I'm very well aware of what happens in kitchens, right from 5 stars to no stars, right? And I've seen what happens behind them. What you also want to do is when you're stocking raw material, please make sure that you're storing heavier items, glass jars on lower shelves and other items on higher shelves, right? Now, when you're packing fridges, this is the right order to pack them. What that means is cooked food, ready to eat food, salads, food that you've prepared goes higher. Then the next food is for packed items like your jam, jellies, if they're closed. Then the ones below is for your medium shelf life things, and bottom is for raw material, like raw vegetables. And the same thing will apply for non-veg, right? Now, when you're storing, if you have only now one fridge, which happens in many cases, raw material will be stored at the bottom, cooked food will be stored on top. If you're doing now veg and non-veg together, veg cooked food will be here, veg raw food will be here, cooked chicken will be here, raw chicken will be here. Does that make sense? Right? Veg has to be on top, non-veg has to be at the bottom. In veg, cooked has to be on top, raw has to be at the bottom. In non-veg, cooked has to be on top, raw has to be. Does that make sense? Right? Whenever you're keeping any prepared food, let's say you made some chicken gravy, you made some gravy, paneer butter, whatever, you made some gravy, you made some dal that has to be used the whole day over 2 days. Many base gravies, last 2-3 days as well. Please make sure that one, it is kept covered, and two, on a sticker, paste a sticker and write down when you made it and by when you have to discard. If you have 2, 3 things stored and by mistake you use something that is already expired, people are going to fall ill. It is going to affect your brand very well, right? So please take this very, very seriously. Quick, this thing. Melvin, are you around?
Yeah, yes, sir. Sorry, there's some technical error due to which I'm not able to turn on my. I suppose you can still hear me, right? Yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
sure. So before we go to the poll, I thought we just quickly cover, whatever Ashwin has been talking about in this segment. So we started first with, water testing, the importance of water testing and the IS 10,500 standards. And then we moved on to medical testing, um, which is the, how important it is to maintain records and stuff like that. And then we moved on to cleaning and hygiene, where Ashwin even said that it's not just about the compliance part of it, but it also contributes to better repeat rates. And then we moved on to temperature monitoring, how to correct it from the suppliers and for high risk food to have a good thermometer. And he also talked about the nuances of the laser versus the contact thermometers. And also the last part we covered raw material handling, starting from a traceable source to storage conditions, best handling practices, and how to maintain records as well. So thank you so much, Ashwin, for that very insightful segment. And now we'll move on to the next poll.
The next poll is a little more tricky, but I'm seeing results. 80% of y'all are in the right place.
Yeah, which is quite amazing.
This was a little more trickier poll. So, guys, the question is, which is not a requirement for by FSSAI regulation for raw material? Okay, we all know 60%. We'll wait for another 10 seconds.
Yeah, we're done.
Done? Cool.
Yeah.
So, guys, I don't know if y'all can see the results. The right answer to this is what is not required is packaging, label, and design, right? Source verification is required, storage condition is required, record keeping is required, especially when you're receiving raw material. You have to have a lot of records on what you received, what temperature you received at, when did you receive it, what is the shelf life. So that basic has to be kept in play. What you are not responsible for is the packaging, label, and design of material you've gotten. Let's say you bought a bottle of jam from somebody. That person has an error on his label. You're not responsible for that. It's his product, right? You don't have to worry about it. You can use it as long as FSSAI license. You can use it. You don't have to worry about the labeling and design of somebody else's product, right? Okay. So moving on further, cooked food handling, which has what 5 things you need to take care of. One is temperature control, right? Second is you have to ensure that there is no cross contamination, right? What we've noticed is cross contamination is one of the most leading factors of why food poisoning happens in the first place, right? So 28% of foodborne illnesses that occur in India are because of improper handling of cooked food, right? And 45% of restaurants that implement FSSAI guidelines, there are only 45% of restaurants that implement all the FSSAI guidelines around cooked food. So this is one area that I see that requires a lot of improvement. Why a lot of this data is coming because we audit thousands and almost lakh of restaurants every year. This is coming. Some of these insights are coming from there. What lands up happening is a person's hygiene, and which is the next point, which is the hygiene standard of food handlers. This becomes absolutely crucial. When we had done a very large study, this was about 6 years ago, 7 years ago, a little bit of the pandemic, we had done a study of why does food poisoning happen? Because in India, Indian cooking, right, everything is steamed, deep fried. There's so many kill steps that nothing should be, like food poisoning should not be happening because anything bad in it should be dead, right? Because when you pressure cook something, right, when you deep fry something, you fry something, you heat something, like Indian cuisine normally doesn't have something that is uncooked or completely raw. very, very, very rare, right? Unless maybe there's some salad or something that way. Everything normally undergoes so much, heat treatment or deep frying, so again heat, that all bacteria die. So why does food poisoning happen? And we have done this across multiple sites, corporate offices, restaurants, food manufacturing, to see hey, when something has failed, why has it failed? This was a very interesting finding. We thought raw material, we thought so many other factors. It was food handlers' hygiene. 80% of foodborne illnesses enter the food chain again after cooking because of food handlers. Please understand this because this is absolutely crucial. Please ensure that your food handlers are trained in basics of food safety using your food safety supervisor, or you can go to external agencies. But this becomes absolutely crucial. Unfortunately, a lot of people working with their hands on the ground, if it's their first job, second job, if they've not received formal training, they're going to make mistakes. What you and I take as common sense is not common sense to them, right? So keep this in mind. We understand it for us, it's just, oh, we go to the bathroom, of course we're going to wash hands, of course we're going to use soap. Many a times it's not common sense to them because they've not come from the background where this may be available, right? Hand washing is another absolutely like a miracle cure. If every single food handler washes the hand thoroughly every time they're supposed to, you can literally wipe out 80 to 90% of foodborne illnesses from the planet. Can be wiped out if every food handler washes their hand, right? Becomes absolutely crucial that this be drilled into their head. It has to become a part of their DNA, right? Today, when you and I are about to eat food, we'll just by default go and wash our hands, or if no hand wash in the way, we will sanitize our hands, we'll do something, right? Because that's just there in our DNA, it's just been ingrained in our head. You, as a founder, you, as a manager, have to ingrain this in your food handler's head that this is a mandatory step, cannot be skipped, right? The next is storage and transport of cooked food is absolutely crucial. When you're storing something, please make sure cooked food is stored at the right temperature, it's stored in clean vessels. And most importantly, if you're keeping cooked food outside on a buffet, or if it's not heated, you can keep it only for 4 hours. If you cooked something to 70, 75 degrees and now you've kept it normally, the shelf life now becomes 4 hours. There are some lines of thinking which is now saying it too, but at the moment it is still 4 hours. It can be kept outside. It will come down to room temperature in about half an hour, 1 hour. It will be at room temperature. Another 3 hours at room temperature after cooking is okay. So 4 hours from when it gets off the gas till when it's on the table, it is okay. After that, it better go in the fridge or better get reheated, right? Keep this in mind. When you're transporting food, again, if you've cooked something and you're taking it for a catering, assignment, anything that's going out, within 4 hours it needs to be consumed or needs to go back in the fridge and needs to get reheated, right? Another part, when you're reheating food, you can reheat one thing only one more time. Let me repeat that. I just made 5 kgs of dal. I've taken it to a party. I've kept everything in the fridge. Now they say, hey, you need to serve dal. Do not take out all the 5 kgs and heat it, because once you heat it, you can't put it back in the fridge. You can't heat it again. You can heat it only once. What I would do is take out my 1 kg in a smaller thing, heat it, serve it. Oh, you need more? Okay, take out 1 kg, heat it, serve it. Do not heat the 5 kgs all over again, because you will not be able to put it back in the fridge. It won't make sense. It will start going bad, right? So you can reheat something once. So reheat it in portions, right? Last but not the least is record keeping. Please ensure you're keeping temperature records. If you When you do training for food staff, if you do swab analysis for food staff, keep a record of that. When you're transporting food, when something is leaving your kitchen, take a temperature using laser and keep a record of that. Oh, we sent out 5 items. Here was the temperature of those 5 items, especially when you're doing catering. Doing it for every order will be very difficult. I'm aware of that. I know it started as a trend during the pandemic, but that has died out. In the pandemic, everything used to be labeled with the person's rider's temperature, cook's temperature, what food was packed at temperature. Now people don't do that. However, for your record, especially for larger orders, please do keep this in mind because it will come and see, right? Um, Now we've covered the 7 mandatory requirements by law. Now I'm going to talk about the 5 best practices. These are not mandated by law, but again, most of the companies that are growing, that are compliant to FSSAI, do follow all these 5, right? So one of the first things is called food labeling. Now, what does food labeling mean? You would have seen this in many restaurants that in front of in the menu, there is a calorie count that is mentioned. There is allergen information that is mentioned. FSSAI came out with a guideline about 5 years ago saying that if you have 10 restaurants or more, or if you have a central license, you need to have this calorie information mentioned and you need to have allergen information mentioned, right? Which is very difficult to pull off because we come from a laboratory. If you have to test 50, 100 items, I know it gets very expensive. So the minute this regulation came out, we solved it by creating a product called Nutripedia, and we'll talk about towards the end, which makes it just 100 times better, faster, than just getting it tested. Obviously, we test also, but it's not mandatory to. I mean, I wouldn't want restaurants to test in a laboratory their food because you don't have 2, 3 items, you have 100. So it just doesn't become economically viable. Right? What this means is you will need to start putting this information. If you have 10 restaurants or more or bigger, what I started seeing is, and we did this by the way, funny, that time also in partnership with Swiggy, it was one of the first movers advantage that Swiggy offered, and we've done lots of recipes through this, where restaurants gave us those recipes, we uploaded to the software, downloaded it, and nutritionists checked it, and this information is given back to the restaurants to put in their menus. What I started seeing is people who did not require to do it, like smaller cafes, there's only one cafe in one place. And they came to us for this. And I literally remember telling them, saying, hey, it's not mandatory for you. Why are you doing it? Like, it's only if you have 10 restaurants or more, or if you have a central license. They're like, hey, no, no, no. We actually want to show this to our customers because, hey, now we look small. Our neighbor has it, this guy has it, this guy has it. We don't have it. That was one. Two, I remember having a round table. We have this thing called Food Founders Ecosystem. I remember having a meeting of about 40 founders. And this obviously came one discussion. What a couple of people were cribbing about it, saying, hey, no, it's expensive. Why is FSA making it mandatory? It should be optional for everyone. What a few founders, the insight they gave me, and I learned this from, they're like, hey guys, one second, understand one thing. If there is, this information mentioned, many of these guys, what they did, they created a separate section, the healthier section. Obviously, you have to mention this in all your recipes. But they created a healthier section with lower calories, with higher protein, lesser fat, all of that. And obviously, if somebody wants to eat healthier, they're also willing to pay a little more, right? So I'm somebody who focuses, let's say, on protein. If I go to a place and they have a health menu, and if there is something protein and if it's going to cost 20% more, I'm happy to pay because that's something I'm focused on. Everyone may not be, but I am, right? And many people who are focused on calories, who are focused on less fat, more protein, whatever, are happy to pay a premium. So within adversity, they found an opportunity, right? Which is a very interesting way of doing things because there are going to be a lot of regulations FSI is going to come out with, or many other things also, which you will find unfair, right? You will be like, hey, why is this? But you can't really change the regulation. But what you can do is, hey, how can I benefit from this regulation, right? So what we then start doing is advising customers whenever we did any masterclass or anything, saying, hey guys, when you're doing this, why don't you create a section which is healthier, have better quality ingredients, lesser fat, have curated menus, special chefs, whatever it takes, right? Have that, and now technically you can make more money, right? So while this expense actually became an opportunity to start making more money from. What we saw is when restaurants have this information available, it boosts customer satisfaction by 30% when they can see what they're doing, right? What they're ordering. Now, another thought a lot of restaurants got to me saying that, hey, nobody's going to order my chole bhature anymore. It's like 900 calories, 1,000 calories. Who's going to order? But after this came out, there wasn't a very big change. People who wanted to have chole bhature had chole bhature. They just worked out the next day a little more. They walked a little more. They consumed something else lesser later, right? So it doesn't affect your business as much. However, if you do it right, it can actually help your business grow. The next one is quarterly staff training. This is not FASTAG. FASTAG is one person every 2 years for every 25. Quarterly staff training is something you should do using either your food safety supervisor, or you can go to third party like us. So there's so many training agencies where your entire staff is taken offline for 2 hours and trained on what is the latest things by FSSAI, what are the basic food safety practices that need to happen, and what are some things that they can do to prevent accidents, contaminations, and ensuring that the overall environment in your kitchen is safe for the employees and for the customers, right? Now, a couple of things happen in this when you do this training. Your staff is going to feel a lot happier saying, oh, my boss or my company is investing in me to train me. Overall, your culture at your place becomes more proactive, becomes more safety focused, right? And this will help you grow, right? Keep this in mind. So 50% if a place has well-trained staff, non-compliances reduce by 50%, right? And food safety violations, 72% of food safety violations can be prevented if your staff is educated on what to do and what not to do. As I mentioned earlier, nobody wakes up saying, "Hey, I want to make 100 people fall in." Right? It is because of mistakes. But if they're trained, those mistakes become lesser, lesser, lesser. To I got training, let's say, oh, the other guy didn't get trained. I see him doing something wrong. I can stop him there and then, don't do it like this. We're supposed to do things, right? So investing in that training becomes absolutely crucial. I think we have a quick little poll.
Yes. So before we go to that poll, I think I just do a quick recap. We started with cooked food handling, the nuance of how even the food handlers' hygiene can alter the course of actually well cooked food according to compliance standards, right? And then Ashwin started talking about 5 best practices. We've covered two. One on food labeling, which doesn't have much negative impact even if you sell a chole bhature, but it's going to have it's a very positive opportunity to make more money if you know how to improvise. And then we covered the quarterly staff training benefits. So this is what was covered. Now on to the poll. Request everybody to start voting soon. And once again, we have a very healthy percentage on the right track. Just wait for a few more seconds so that everyone can chime in. Yeah. Ashwin, over to you.
Yeah, so I think 77% of people, got it right, which is the following primary benefit of conducting regular food safety training sessions for your staff is promotes proactive and safety focused workplace culture. By the way, it will reduce operational costs a little bit. It will increase product variety of satisfaction because your team is now more trained. They're going to be happier. They will innovate more. They will be doing more things. It will, however, not improve your staff's ability to click better photos. But okay, so moving forward, the next thing that most customers do and most restaurants do as one of the best practices is do monthly deep cleaning. This is critical because guess what? When you're making food, your place is going to get dirty. It is not a pharmaceutical unit where everything is machined and there's nothing that falls out. It's a live kitchen. Things are going to fall. It's going to spill. Something's going to go behind the counter. Something's going to go behind the fridge. Something's going to go under the thing. So once in a month, taking maybe 2 3 hours and moving everything away from walls, lifting things up, whatever, and getting it deep cleaned. Your own staff can do it. You can hire somebody external to do it because when you get deep cleaning done, it will reduce contaminants. It will reduce pests because there are a lot of areas in a kitchen that will attract pests, which will harbor contaminants. Deep cleaning will ensure that all this is taken care of, right? This is again a very proactive approach which will ensure that your entire environment is safer and healthier, right? So 70% of deep cleaning can lower pest sightings by 70%. The reason is today pests hide in so many places which are not easily accessible. The daily, jhadu katka is not going to reach all those places. But deep cleaning will ensure that whatever is there either leaves or is killed or dies, so that it's not seen. Because the worst thing is, imagine somebody's in the kitchen, you see a cockroach walking around, or you see a rat, or something, lizards. In deep cleaning, all of this can be taken care of, right? Businesses with regular deep cleaning improve hygiene scores by 30%. The reason is, if this is, by the way, done often, that psychology of, hey, I have to maintain a clean kitchen comes in. And automatically, a lot of things that require, which we check in audits, are already taken care of, right? So this is something that I really wish a lot more restaurants did. You can do it in-house or you can hire external agencies to come and do this for you as well, right? Quarterly audits, right? So while Hygiene Seal audit is once in a year, right? By the way, we are one of the partners for Hygiene Seal. If I didn't mention that earlier, there are other partners as well. But Hygiene Seal is great once in a year, but that is when you get the final stamp. Now, what typically happens is when there is a hygiene seal audit, you know that there's an audit, everyone in the team knows, and they get the audit, everything is prepared. If you are very serious about improving food safety and keeping it improved, getting quarterly audits done is absolutely crucial, right? You can do this again in house. You can have a person who's trained to do an audit, or two, you can come to an external agency like us who will come and audit it for you. If you have one unit, great, you're there, you're monitoring everything. But if you have more than 1 unit, you are not there all the time. You don't know what are the practices that are being followed. Sometimes, even if you are there, you are just looking at business, you are looking at so many things that food safety may not be your topmost priority. It may not even come to you as easily as it should, right? Because there's so many things you have to look at, right, as a founder and as a manager. So when you get this done, when you get an audit done, it helps you to keep potential risks low, right? Tomorrow, if something is going wrong, you're able to find out beforehand before it becomes a big issue, and you're able to resolve it, right? 80% of risks, food safety risks, can be mitigated because of quarterly audits. Not because of quarterly audits, because quarterly audits will have some findings, you will fix those findings. That is what will mitigate that risk, right? 50% of failures that you normally have, they'll go down by 50%. If you get audits done more often, external audit failures will almost drop to half or less, because you are getting those updates regularly. You know what is going right. You can emphasize that. You can appreciate people for doing what they're doing right. And two, if there's something going off, you can always help improve it. But if you never find out, you never audit it out, right? There's a quick poll on audits as well.
Yeah. So that was a short segment that covered two things. One is the monthly deep cleaning, the direct and indirect benefits of doing that. And then we also covered quarterly audits. So what are the benefits of doing it, and what sort of benefits you offer when we go for external audits. So now moving to the poll very quickly. Ashwin, can you see the poll happening?
No, I can't see a poll, which is what I was wondering what happened.
I'll just check.
Don't worry about it. So, guys, if you can look at, I mean, the polls also on your screen, right? So, how do quarterly audits help in maintaining food safety within a business? Is it A, identify and resolve potential risks before they escalate? Is it B, solely focus on financial performance? Is it C, by enhancing customer feedback mechanism? Or is it C, D, focus only on product quality and taste? So I think all of you kind of sort of know the answer over here. It is A, it will help identify and resolve potential risks before they escalate, right? So getting this done is a great tool for you, especially if you're looking to grow, and quality and safety is one of your key parameters of growth, a key parameter of differentiation. Then this is something that's going to definitely help, right? Last but not the least is quality testing. Getting your tested regularly for pathogens, allergens, chemical residues, and especially microbial safety is important as you're growing, as you want to venture into new avenues. You want to get into corporate catering. You want to start doing catering events for larger, organizations. This becomes a differentiator. Today, you cannot crack a large corporate if you're not doing basics of testing, because all large corporates will ask you the first thing, hey, how often do you get testing done? Show me your reports, right? We work with so many catering agencies. People, restaurants want to cater to corporates. If they have done something this way, their chances improve significantly. Large companies do not want to take a risk with a smaller brand because they're not sure of quality. But if you've gotten testing done and you're able to showcase that, your chance of cracking that corporate becomes a lot easier, right? And last, as but not the least, is swab analysis, which I mentioned earlier. Swab analysis can be done on a hand or on surfaces to ensure that whatever cleaning that you've done, is it safe or not, or did it happen properly? Right? What we've seen is a 90% of establishments, who conduct food testing once in 6 months are compliant overall, right? Because this shows that they're confident about what they're doing. When they're doing food testing, when they're doing swab testing, they're a lot more confident, right? And just by doing swab analysis, 60% reduction in spread from surfaces, because if you're doing swab analysis and your team knows about it, they're going to clean better, they're going to clean more often, because they know randomly some guy is going to come from a laboratory and do a swab and find out whether I did my job correctly or not, whether I washed my hands correctly, right? This kind of brings us to the end of our presentation. Melvin, do you want to talk about this slide again? Because I think we covered it at the beginning. You want to just refresh people on this?
Yes, Ashwin. So I think I covered this in the at the beginning of the session. So this is a one-stop shop, for multiple restaurant services, which is directly accessible from your owner app. So I would urge all our restaurant partners to actually explore, many of these avenues. Right? Yeah.
Cool. Okay. So going ahead, guys, I think there are some questions that were pre-submitted. So while Melvin pulls them up, I'm going to give you a quick 30-second introduction to our services, which I didn't cover in the beginning. So if you all need help with recipe calculations, we have a software called Nutripedia that does that 10 times cheaper than testing, 10 times faster than testing. So when I say 100% better or 100 times better, that's what I mean. If you want to do, if you are packaging any kind of things, if you're packaging anything as a restaurant, if you're doing sauces, you're sending things which are pre-packed, getting nutrition label and shelf life is mandatory by law. So that is something we do. We are one of the largest in the country for this. And if you're creating any kind of a packaged bottle or anything which has a design, getting those labels validated is something we do. When it comes to water, the mandatory water testing, which is IS 105, of course we do that, but we also have another cheaper service called water portability, which is instead of 88 parameters, 18 parameters, but many a times FSSAI also accepts that, because many people don't do 10500, but you have to upload something. You can't upload nothing, right, on fast cost. So getting the water portability is another great way of doing it. In audits, the hygiene, the restaurant hygiene certification or the seal audit by Swiggy, of course, we are a partner to them. So if you are interested, do reach out either to us or to your managers. We'll send you the same link and you can sign up from there. And last but not the least is training, fast track training and internal safety training. If you need, please feel free to reach out to us. We also have another interesting thing, and by the way, this is all what on screen is completely free, is only for founders. It's called the Food Founders Ecosystem. We today have over 2,500 food founders in this ecosystem. This is right now on WhatsApp, and we are creating an app, and we have meetups very often. We actually have one in Bangalore in 2 days, right? So you can scan the QR code to join the thing. What this does is it puts you in touch with other food founders. So if you have doubts, if you need a supplier for something, if you have a doubt on something like, hey, do I need a PAN card for this? Do I need GST for that? Or hey, do you have a good vendor for this? Or I'm working with this vendor, is it good or not? Whatever it is, you can actually have those discussions with other founders. You will get access to trusted vendors. And we are also coming in something where you can actually even refer people to each other as well, right? So if you need to reach out to us, you can either just Google us or our contact information is here. Do take a second out and scan this QR code, which will allow us to know. So this is, you'll get to rate me as a presenter today, how the presentation was and how I was, and you'll get to download the presentation as well, right? And there are, if you want to follow us on socials, that's there as well. Melvin, I think there is a survey you want to pull up.
Yeah. Should we do the questions first, Ashwin, before we? I
Sure.
just selected the top, three questions. So the first question is, can you tell folks a bit about garbage segregation and how it affects or how it may affect cross contamination?
Excellent. That's a beautiful question. So, whenever you're taking care of garbage, there are two, three things you need to worry about. First is segregation of garbage, wet garbage versus recyclable. Two, ensure that your garbage bins are covered. Now, in a restaurant, it's very difficult to do because continuously garbage is being generated for cutting things. Then you can even have under the table garbage where there are holes and you can slide things into it. So, if you're, let's say, cutting vegetables, you're cutting a lot of them, normally you'll see a hole with a garbage bin under it. Three, every hour, get somebody to check all the garbage bins to ensure they're not overflowing, right? If garbage accumulates, it will do the following. It will attract fruit flies, it will attract normal flies, it will attract other sorts of insects and pests, because that is what they come in for. So managing garbage is absolutely crucial from a hygiene perspective. Three, if you're handling garbage, now it's your job to tie the thing and take it out and throw it in the in the larger bin. Please make sure you wash your hands thoroughly, because you've just touched garbage, you've touched the bin over there, you opened it, you put it out. Many people are like, no, I wore gloves to do that, or I took out my gloves, I did it with my hands, and I'm putting gloves back on. No, that's not how germs work, unfortunately. Germs don't know the difference between gloves and your hands. They will get dirty. So if you are handling garbage in any way or form, please wash your hands before resuming your work, right?
Thank you.
Melvin, next.
Yeah, the next one is a very interesting one. So they want to know if there is any connection between compliance and kitchen design.
Ooh, that's a very interesting one. Yes, there is a connection between compliance and kitchen design, which is when you're designing your kitchen, it needs to be in a single uniflow direction. What that means is materials coming from one place get stored here, they get taken out from here, consumed here. I mean, or converted into food here, and food is dispatched from here. Right? Garbage is taken out in a different direction. Your garbage should not cross across your kitchen. Right? Your cooked food, let's say, to go out. Right? Your washing areas have to be segregated. There is an entire, I mean, we can have an entire another masterclass on kitchen design, right? Because this is that's a 4 6 hour topic on what are some of the best practices to do. But a couple of things to follow is your main garbage dump should not be across your, means I shouldn't have to carry garbage across the whole kitchen to take it out, because it will will cause cross contamination. Two, when you're designing a kitchen, there is going to be water on the floor. So having drains in a lot of places is a great idea. Many a times, good kitchens have a common, many a times open drain, and the reason you keep it open is so that it gets cleaned very often. So any kind of waterfall, any liquid falls, they can literally just scrape it into that drain and it will get washed out, right? And if it's open, it gets cleaned more often. If you cover the drain, inside that becomes very nasty very quickly, right? So these are 2 3 tips I can offer. That's a whole other masterclass right there.
Sure. And the last one is people want to know if they're new to this, and what are some of the avenues where they can pick up more knowledge about this whole compliance bit.
So I think Swiggy is doing a great job at that, where they're doing classes like this, which will allow you to do it. But two, if you want to learn more things, you want to connect with other founders and learn. Two, please join the Food Founder ecosystem. That is, by the way, it's all free. There's nothing paid in Food Founder ecosystem. It's a free WhatsApp group. Right now, we have two of them because WhatsApp only has 2,000 in one group. So now we have two groups that we started. And then very soon we have an app coming in as well, right? Which will just make it easier. So ask people about it, because guess what? As an industry, I have not seen another industry that is so willing to help somebody else out, right? So whenever we do Food Founder events, you will just see how much people are happy to share knowledge, but all you have to do is ask. What I've seen a lot of people do is they don't ask. If you don't ask, you're not going to get the answer, right? So if you want to learn new things, ask somebody else. You want to start a Chinese restaurant, ask somebody who's running a Chinese restaurant. You'll be very surprised how much insight that the person is willing to share with you, right? Many people think that this is a very crowded market. It is an ocean. It is an absolute ocean. There's so many opportunities available, so many geographies available, so many different cuisines available. I know 2 people who met literally at my house here for one of the events. Both are in the Chinese business, but both cater to very different segments. One is catering to extremely high and one is catering to masses. They had a 1 hour conversation, and the rest 20 of us are just sitting and watching them. It was such an amazing thing to see, where entrepreneurs are helping each other out, right? So one, I think Swiggy is doing a great job, doing sessions like this. So whenever they do sessions, please attend it. I'm very sure you learn something from it. And two, please join the Food Founder ecosystem. There's always a lot of learning you can get from there as well.
Amazing. Thanks. I think we'll just move on. Just a request to everyone before logging off to just take the final feedback poll that we'll be launching now.
Oh, I'm liking the response on the last 2 questions. I'm very happy to see that almost everyone is going to attend future webinars, which is also on different topics, and going to recommend friends to webinars. Melvin and Swiggy team, I think you've done something right.
Happy to know that. And thank you so much, Ashwin, for the very, very insightful session today. I think it was insightful to me as well, even though I don't run a restaurant, but I think it was very insightful to know about these things. And great, very, very great session that we had today. And thank you to all the participants. And looking forward to catching you all in the next episode.
Yes. Chalo. Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Melvin. Thanks, Swiggy team. And thanks all of you for coming on this. It was really a lot of fun. Love the questions. And I'm very happy that Swiggy's done something this way. I mean, it's amazing to see a company that's doing so much for its users. I'm really inspired. I should be doing more of this for our customers. But anyway, thank you so much. Thanks, Anima. Thanks.
Thank you.
Have a
Thank you,
great day,
Ashwin.
guys. Bye.
Yes. Bye.